And as long as you're checking all of those boxes, proper body positioning on the bench, proper elbow positioning and hand placement and breathing and bracing and just the actual fundamental technique, then I promise that your bench press is going to skyrocket. Flat barbell pressing is one of the most technical lifts that you can do in the gym for various reasons, but most notably because it is a very technical compound lift. You're using the glenohumeral joint of the shoulder and also the humeral ulnar joint of the elbow in conjunction of each other to press the weight up and ultimately close the gap of your humerus through adduction across the torso and then extension of the shoulder at the same time. Along with this, a lot of people use a lot of leg drive, which is basically just using your knee joint and then pressing into the ground with your quads in order to emphasize power output and be able to press more strongly. So there's so much going on. So I think that it's important to get everything right. And it all starts with your positioning on the bench. And what I like to do is kind of have a slight arch just to further increase power output and also decrease the range of motion that you have to go through. A lot of powerlifters do this by having a more emphasized arch that'll decrease the range of motion and you'll actually be able to get more repetitions. But if your main goal is hypertrophy, I encourage less of an arch, just kind of like maybe like a 2-inch arch, so that you still get kind of like the best of both worlds. You still have a strong base of support, but then you also have a really long range of motion to emphasize hypertrophy. Your grip positioning also plays a big role, but it's not only about your grip positioning, it's also about how your humerus is positioned relative to your torso. So if it's more at like a 90 degree, that's going to emphasize more of your chest and less of your triceps, just because of the nature of where it's positioned, versus if it's more inward, like a close grip bench press, you're going to be emphasizing more tricep. Your chest is going to be hit a ton, but it's going to get the tricep more so. So kind of take that into account when you're pressing. Also, a lot of people say that this causes shoulder impingement. I don't really think that it does, but if it's messing with your shoulders, then having that 90 degree may not be the best idea. I like to go like a little bit outside of shoulder width. And the main takeaway is that you want your limbs stacked. So when you're pressing, you don't want like your wrist all the way in like this, or else you're going to be leaking a lot of power since your limbs aren't stacked. Same with all the way out here. So I like kind of shoulders tucked, like a good, like slightly outside shoulder width, so that my limbs are stacked while I'm pressing. And then additionally, you also want to retract your scapulae blades, because the more forward they are, the more emphasis the anterior portion of the deltoid is going to have in the lift. And that can cause shoulder problems, but most notably, it's just going to take away from how much the chest is doing. And this is a bench press. We're trying to involve the chest as much as we can. So by retracting the shoulder blades, it's putting the chest out, and then you're having more of an easier time really using your chest and doing the functions that it wants to do, like humeral adduction. Finally, we come to the actual execution of the lift. I love to breathe and brace. So basically just sucking in a bunch of air into your abdomen and then pushing against your abdominal wall to increase the intra-abdominal pressure within your core. And this is just going to help reinforce stability, which stability is just a huge component in being able to lift a ton of weight. So by doing that, and then also using leg drive, basically just pushing against with your quads. And I like to have my feet pretty far back so that I'm almost like a spring. Then you're going to slowly lower the weight, use the tempo that we all know is good and great. Slow and controlled, deliberate eccentric, and then a powerful concentric. Make sure you're doing the full range of motion, getting it all the way down to your chest before exploding up. And then lastly, I think the bar path is very important. I like to go kind of like mid chest, kind of like lower sternum area. And because that'll actually kind of tuck my elbows in and give that kind of good elbow position that we want. So when you lower down to there, then you can explode. And you kind of want as rigid, straight up and down as a bar path as you can, but with a slight kind of dip at the bottom. So you're kind of like going down like this, down here, and then pressing almost upwards like that. And as long as you're checking all of those boxes, proper body positioning on the bench, proper elbow positioning and hand placement, and breathing and bracing, and just the actual fundamental technique, then I promise that your bench press is going to skyrocket. I actually received a comment recently where people were like, well, actually one guy was like, keep your head firmly planted on the bench. Now, I think a lot of people tend to want to do that just because they think that it's going to injure their neck. But if you look at the biomechanics of the lift, in no way are you actually using your neck while you're pressing the weight. So I don't know how it's going to injure yourself unless you're like being really foolish with the way that you're lifting. However, I do think that keeping your head on the pad will kind of create some rigidity in your spine and may emphasize stability even more so. So my natural inclination is to lift my head just to kind of like press the weight up. But I think that going forward, that's a modification. That's somewhere where I'm going to try and improve by keeping my head down. I've preached many, many times that this is a journey not only for me to educate and entertain you guys, but also to continue to grow as a lifter and a fitness enthusiast and all that jazz. So anyway, thank you guys for watching. I know it was a short one, but I hope that you took something out of it, just like I took something out of it. I mean, I'm going to start implementing that little one. I'm going to keep working on my leg drive because I think that that's an area that I could just improve upon. And yeah, see you later. Have a good one.